What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan. I'm here with my co-host Dave Martinson. Hey, just want to take another look at you.
You are a loser, Pat.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe for a concept pod, we just do a whole like Eddie Brock and Venom thing, where like whoever's talking in one section, we just had the other person doing the Venom take. I don't know. What do you think?
It's not a bad idea, I'm sure you're a loser on your plan, so a lot of common ground.
Yeah, man. Well, anyone that's been listening to the pod for any amount of time would probably agree with that statement. But if you're following the pod, that means that you like us. So share us with friends, subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud.com/nostalgiapod to find every way to be following us. We're going to be talking Venom, A Star is Born, 21 Pilots, Hozier. But we're starting today with The Mandalorian, Disney's new Star Wars IP. Jon Favreau show running this story that's going to take place on the planet of Mandalore. And Boba Fett and Jango Fett famously wore the Mandalorian armor. They were not Mandalorians, but there's been one picture released last week, and it looks pretty sick. I mean, it got me pretty hype. What was your initial response to seeing this first picture and finding out the name of this show?
Yeah, no, it looks like they're spending $10 million an episode on the show, as we found out, which is great. I think any caution people would have with a live-action Star Wars show, and part of the reason George Lucas never really made the shows that he wrote countless scripts for was due to cost, and Disney. This is going to be the flagship, I assume, adult-themed title for year, and they're wisely not going to spare any expense. That's the same amount of cost per episode, for example. So that's great, and that first image looks really dynamite. Looks messy. I think shows like Arrow and all those CW superhero shows, and even maybe the Marvel Netflix shows to a lesser extent, they always felt like they could have given you more if more was invested in them, right? So I'm just hoping that the Mandalorian continues to run, smoothly the way we have, literally go off so far, and all these different directors, exciting names being thrown out. Taika Waititi staying in the Disney family. Dave Filoni, Star Wars, Lucasfilm veteran, Rick Famuyiwa, Deborah Chow,
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, and that's I think that might be the most interesting one, right? I know Bryce Dallas Howard's done some writing, but I don't know how much directorial experience she has. So that's a cool pick, Obviously, maybe satiating Ryan Howard for
Solo revival,
taking a lot of heat for Solo. So very exciting all around. So I'm eager to see maybe a teaser early next year or something.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we've been talking a lot about, especially during awards times, how Game of Thrones kind of winding down. Last season, there's going to be these spin-offs, but it's going to leave a huge void in terms of what people are watching. And I mean, it's not that if you watch Game of Thrones, it's all you watch, but it takes a lot to follow a show like that. There's a lot of mythology behind it. If you can get really lost to theories. Shows are an hour plus long, so it's an investment. And within the next couple of years, there's a lot of big IP out there, a lot of fantasy IP out there that's going to be coming. Star Wars is the one that we're talking about now, as I mentioned, the Game of Thrones spin-offs, which I think we'll probably see, probably as Thrones is wrapping up next year. Some of the trailers come out for that. Chronicles of Narnia is coming to Netflix. They bought all the C.S. Lewis property there. We got the King Killer Chronicles, which Lin-Manuel Miranda is running for Showtime. Lord of the Rings coming to Amazon, we talked about, and that's supposed to be Game of Thrones level budget. So we'll see if that equals quality. Dark Materials on BBC. It's the James McAvoy property, which they said that they might only make one season, but there's I think like 13 books in that series or something like that. There's a lot. And then the Wheel of Time also coming to Amazon. So there's a lot of different IP coming up. What do you make of
Wheel of
this?
Time's the one with the books. His Dark
Oh,
Materials is only
sorry,
3. That's the Golden Compass trilogy.
sorry,
Um,
I had it the other way around.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's fascinating that everyone, all the various networks, and I think BBC will be uniting with HBO to show his Dark Materials over here in the US. So basically, everyone has skin in the game, and someone like Amazon, like you said, Wheel of Time, a series with like 13, 15 books, various timelines. I mean, that's the series that was not finished by its original author. Robert Jordan passed away, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the common example for George R. R. Martin to get his act together, right? And the fact that they're going to do that, something that's never really been adapted, while also doing Lord of the Rings as their big bet. It's crazy to see everyone just kind of commodifying the fantasy genre and hoping to find that next Game of Thrones or even that next Walking Dead, just to show that really commands the screen time and endangers, or emboldens, we have that blueprint for how you make really good franchise TV in the prestige era. So the potential is there for all of these shows, given that almost all of them have a lot of good talent already attached. So we just kind of got to let's see how it goes, because if they're all competing side by side, something inevitably will fall by success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with these coming to streaming and kind of, I think a point a lot of people are making is these shows don't care if you're watching them all at the same time, if you're watching them week to week. They just want to have them in their library for people to discover. The thing about Game of Thrones, though, is similar to Breaking Bad or other shows that really capture the zeitgeist, is people are talking about them as they happen. You can't be on Twitter as Game of Thrones is airing and you're not watching it. So it's interesting, I think, how these shows are going to go about it, because for a show like Game of Thrones, it really just had it encapsulates it monopolizes that time. It's all people are talking about when it's happening. But these shows are going to be different, and I don't know if, especially coming to streaming platforms, all being released, if they'll all be released at once in small chunks, if any of these will ever be able to really reach that Game of Thrones level again. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think so. Almost all of these properties are. I mean, I wouldn't say they're super mainstream or have this super big ability to become really broad appeal on their own.
Mhm.
Almost all of these, they're old. These books have been around a while, right?
Mhm.
Best selling and whatnot. But the reason Game of Thrones, became so big and so lauded was not because it was a very dense fantasy world like all these other shows. It was because it was about well written, interesting characters, and, you know, relationships and things like that, right?
Mhm.
And if these other shows don't have that and they just have dense lore, if done well, it'll still attract fans of the property already,
Right.
but probably won't, you know, burst through the peak TV bubble and get anybody else. And all
Mhm.
these, networks and services want everybody else as well.
Right.
So, honestly, really, it's going to come down to quality and exposure, but uh, we've seen what happens when something that's really good doesn't, really jump out beyond its core base. I mean, heck, the channel Sci-Fi does a lot of these weird bets all the time.
Mhm.
Usually not, don't invest as much as they should, but I mean, they never become gigantic hits even when they're good. So, you know, we have quite the range of possibilities, and now we just got to see if all these shows do in fact get made, and then how good they actually are.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch, and we'll be talking about them. The more that these sort of properties come out, the more I just appreciate shows like The Good Place, something that's like 30 minutes. It's short. It's kind of mindless in ways. Like you don't have to invest too much, especially
Mhm.
because like right now I'm catching up on Saul. I'm working my way through Maniac. I look forward to The Good Place almost more than any other show, or like Survivor, which is like an hour of like mindless television every Wednesday, just because uh, they take a lot out of you, and especially after we this isn't our full time job. We work for a living, so you only have so much
For now,
so much. Yeah, for now, sponsor the pod. We are sellouts of nothing else, but it's just nice to have that time where you don't need to be so invested. So we'll be talking about it as it comes up. Let's jump into a little bit of music here. Hozier, my guy. His self-titled album dropped 4 years ago now. And the EP came out 5 years ago. Uh, really successful. Take Me to Church was a massive hit. And I think overall, just people who listened to the album felt like there were a lot of really well crafted, folk alt rock songs in there. And I think the thing that comes across most with him is he's writes really really good lyrics, but packages it in a way that's fun to listen to. A song like Jackie and Wilson, I think, is a perfect example where it's meaningful, nice song, and it's very catchy and fun. But nothing about him, I think, blows me away. So then, fast forward, Nina Cried Power EP drops a couple weeks ago. And he's trying out some different things here. It's the first time we've heard from him in a while. He had a couple of shows. I think he had 3 shows at Radio City in New York City. He's about to be rolling out this bigger album. What did you think of these 4 songs? Because I think some of it's a lot of the same, and some of it has some promise.
You mentioned this EP to me, I was like, oh shit, yeah, what the fuck has Hozier been doing this whole time? Because it's like, Take Me to Church, this when it was released as a single, and then the EP along with it. He was 23 when that song came out. He's 28 now. And that album you referenced, self-titled, that captured the 2 EPs he released and some other songs. And it was actually a pretty impressive album considering it was, a lot of material from young career, right? All over, and I guess went away and recorded. It's been pretty quiet, and for a young star in rock music, it's kind of something that the genre needs to be present. All this, so it's kind of disappointing in that regard. But there's, good songs like Cry. I think that starts out very familiar, and they knew where I. Favorite song was the immediate follow up, NFW MB, Nobody Fucks With My Baby. I thought that was really cool, and that doesn't sound like anything he used to do.
Mm-hmm.
That more muted, reserved chorus. I really really got into that one. So yeah,
very
I think
chilly.
It's definitely promising.
Yeah, I think Mavis Staples brings something to Nina Cried Power, the title track, that was really absent on his other album, on his self-titled album. And also the music video, having all these Irish activists listening to his song while these images of protests and things play in the background is pretty powerful. Probably my favorite song, though, was Moment Silence. I feel like his like bluesy rhythm and like the guitar riff on that just really like sucked me in. And I mean, he's talking about making love on that track, Dave. So nothing to hate there. I think that there's a lot to like. I just, since he's been away for so long, the indie rock field has like, we talked about what's happened to rock, but I feel like the indie rock field has become very populated with people trying a lot of things and being pretty successful. We talked a lot about Waxahachie, which we gave a positive review to, despite what people may think. We talked about Snail Mail and even like Father John Misty's most recent album we liked a lot. So there's a lot of people in the genre doing some interesting things. And I want to see him pushing himself more on the LP when it comes out, because I want to, I really want him to invent himself in a way that is unique and gives it justice. I don't want him to just be the indie pop, indie rock pop guy, that can make these songs that make it to the radio, but not really doing much. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's worth a listen to the EP for now. The kings of indie rock, though, if you can even call them indie rock at this point, 21 Pilots released their follow-up to their, what was it, like triple platinum album Blurry Face.
Massive album.
Crazy. Trench came out this past Friday, it's what, 15 tracks, 14 tracks, runs almost an hour. Before I give you my take, I want to hear, what did you think of this album?
Yeah. So, or at least known of 21 Pilots for some time. You were in on the band before they went super mainstream with the last album, Blurry Face, and I think you saw them perform at least twice, right?
Yeah, I've seen them 3 times now.
3 times, right? At small venues. I mean, now they play arenas. So it's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was on board, there's some pretty impressive rides, you know. Um, and I actually kind of like their music more as they got more popular, just because. And overall, just walk back for a second. I found I'm usually one camp or the other. I actually really dig the song, or I really don't like the song, and I feel like their albums kind of are always all over the place in that regard for me. The reason I like Blurry Face more than Vessel Face just was like a tighter produced album, which probably lent itself to radio more, hence their big success with songs like Ride and Stressed Out. I just because I never felt like their songwriting did it for me. I know some people really attach themselves to that, songs like Car Radio, for example, right? But
Yeah.
I've always kind of found like the sad boy aesthetic a little off-putting. So some of those songs I'm not really into from them. And that being said, I just thought Blurry Face just sounded better. And even though I still think it's an album that's kind of all over the place, but as you listen to it, because again, it's another long listen, I thought it was a step up. And this album, Trench, they released like 4 singles or so leading up to this, and they really had one away up until they just started up a traditional rollout for this. Look, they're doing arena tours. Sounds like an album's coming. Here's some singles. Yep, they're back. And that was after a big, year plus world tour after Blurry Face. So they kind of are just being big rock stars, alternative rock star. Really, I think it starts off like Jumpsuit. There's actually like real guitars on that, and then like they forgot guitars existed. If you listen to the rest of the album, they always have the drums, given the role, the duo. The drums are always there. They're like electronically present. The guitars just kind of evaporated after the start of the album. Just because we were listening, and I was like, oh shit, okay, this is new. Oh, never mind, they forgot. But I think once again, when they hit on a song on this album, I think they're successful. And then when they don't, I think there's some weird songs on here. So it's kind of business as usual, I guess, for me. But what was your take as someone who's been into the band far longer than I have?
Yeah, I think the thing I liked about Vessels is, and I think people knock them a lot for this, is they switch up their songs in the middle so severely. It can throw you off the first time you hear it, because you're like, is this even the same song? Sometimes the way that it digresses, but they always bring it back around, and I felt like that's actually what made them very unique. Where Blurry Face kind of took them a little bit more mainstream. Like you said, it was a little more tightly produced, which I think actually makes this album my favorite since Vessels. I mean, Vessels holds a very special place in my heart when I discovered them, and it was just probably one of my favorite concerts ever I've been to. But I think the way that the songs transition on this, and the way that the ideas are tied together throughout the album, as well as just like I said, the production and the sounds in this seem a little bit more just precise. I think like a song like My Blood, I think is maybe the best song that they've made since Vessels, in my opinion. I think it's really great. It has a very like Killers type vibe to it, actually.
That song reminded me of wasn't the Killers. Foster the People.
Yeah, definitely.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think My Blood is probably my favorite song on here. But yeah, I agree. I think that they could definitely use some more guitars in there. But for a band that, started off as pretty much like piano and drums, I think that they try to stay true to that. Like they end the album with pretty much a piano ballad with Leave the City. But yeah, there are certain moments in this album that I really just love. Levitate, the drums on that just like crash and snare throughout it that are just amazing. I don't really like when they try to go reggae, and I think like Nico and the Niners. I think that was a single that just didn't hit for me. And Pet Cheetah just, I think, is like the worst of 21 Pilots when they can be a little all over the place and try to pull almost too many genres in together. But they really are a genre bending band that I think is able to capture things that, especially like late teenage, early 20s, you're trying to like figure yourself out. They really encapsulate that and almost corner that market. So, I mean, overall, I liked it a lot. Still not up there with Vessels for me, but probably I like it way better than Blurry Face.
Word, yeah. Pet Cheetah, for example, you're right. That really is one of those like grab bag songs they make. Like the production, I think, is pretty solid. You listen to that hook, and you're just like, all right, well, you ruined the song.
Yeah.
You know, like songs like another song like Legend. Like I read my notes, Legend question mark.
Right.
I like some of it. Don't like a lot of the other parts. So it's like, you know, I don't know if I ever can listen to that song again. It's weird.
Yeah, like Smithereens, for example, is a song that reminds me a lot of House of Gold, which is just like it's a sweet acoustic song. And Smithereens is just, it's more, it doesn't have any ukulele in it, like House of Gold does, but just like it's a love song. It's very upbeat, kind of sweet. And they're talking about the low lights of fame on this in a lot of ways and how that plays into their depression and anxiety. So, yeah, 21 Pilots, I think they're a band that's starting to find their footing, and I think that they can definitely continue propelling forward and being huge. They're not going to stop headlining festivals anytime soon, and this album's not going to do anything to, I think, elevate them more, but it's definitely keeping them on par with where they're at. So I think probably My Blood will be added to the playlist, and check that out on Spotify. Nowstalgia Best of 2018. We have, I think, almost 110 songs on there right now. Well, Dave, it's time to talk about it. I think the first time we talked about Venom was what, 2 years ago when it was announced.
We kind of reacted the same way we reacted 2 weeks ago. It's like, not sure why this exists. Creatively, we know why it exists. Financially, Venom, Sony used their extended Spider-Man IP licensing, so it was still an interesting choice. And then you watch the movie, my takeaway is the same as it was before. Interesting choice after seeing it.
Yeah, it. So, but just to talk about my experience real quick, I went to one of those theaters where you have to purchase your seat, but I showed up a little late because I wanted to skip the previews. And by the time I got to my seat, the movie had started, and someone was sitting in my seat. So it was dark. I just didn't want to fight with them, so I like went down to like the front row. I sat in the front row. So that's already gonna skew my take of the movie a little bit because I just was not sitting in a good seat for it. But then, man, I went into it thinking that I was going to get a lot of laughs out of it because people were saying that the humor kind of salvages a lot of the movie. And I think there were some funny moments. Venom in particular, playing off Eddie Brock's I don't know, lack of courage or him being a pussy basically at points, which I think that's probably my favorite moment when he told him to jump and he didn't jump and he called him a pussy. But there's so much about this movie that was just baffling. I think Hardy is really charismatic in the role, and I actually give him a lot of credit because he just went for it, and like it at least makes it watchable and something interesting. But yeah, I was left with a lot of just like head scratching and just feeling like, why?
Yeah, it's to be blunt, it's just dumb. The dialogue is bad.
Oh my god, horrible.
Quote Michelle Williams, "I'm sorry about Venom."
Okay.
Wait, how do they explain Venom's like heel turn to?
I'm a loser on my planet, and it's here I can be something more, I guess. Right. So let's say
it's also like tonally all over the place, and I think just it's weird, and we're so used to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and whether you like or you're tired of the monotony of the MCU, one thing they never fail with is establishing a consistent tone, right? And I think DC, they had some issues with tone. They're seemingly writing that ship. It sounds like Aquaman tonally will be more in line with Wonder Woman. So we hope, have some footing, right? But
Hmm.
this movie itself does not maintain a tone throughout. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of campy humor, stuff that I found legitimate, was having a good old time laughing at the idiocy, right?
Hmm.
Rational and nonsensical in his decision
Hmm.
making throughout the film, which it seemed out of character the way they established him as somebody really smart.
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, you spoke to Hardy's choices, and again, I think Hardy definitely went for it, like you said. Not sure what that accent was. It wasn't New York, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, he was in the Bay, and he's from New York, so I mean, he did something weird with that. But I think his best scene thing was probably that restaurant scene. I thought that was hilarious. With like in
Yeah.
the lobster tank, and just like, this is dead, and like I think some of those moments are really funny. The problem is it's a movie that has funny or at least amusing moments packaged around a dumb. Like they're really sad of that. Apparently, he's actually a good boyfriend, right? Like, and like, is
Right.
he Ben Greenwald or is he Alex Jones for the Eddie Brock show? I'm not really sure. You
Yeah.
know, there's just a lot of. I just have a lot of notes.
Yeah, I think more than anything, just like how bad this script was is like very evident. You know, I actually didn't hate Riz Ahmed's performance. I think every time he was on screen, I enjoyed
Yeah,
watching him. It was just was like, I mean, first of all, his outfit choices, like the zip up quarter zip with uh, the jacket over it, was just such a bizarre first time meeting him. And then, uh, you know, you don't really even meet Riot until what, like 20 minutes left in the movie?
yep,
Like it's like all of a sudden, yeah, here's Riot, and this is actually the real villain of the movie. It's kind of like, oh, and I know that they wanted to make this more about Eddie Brock and Venom meeting each other and becoming, we are Venom. But at the same time, I feel like they also kind of rushed that at points. Like Venom's motives weren't really clear. We don't really understand any reason why he just decided to all of a sudden start listening to Eddie. Like he could have just controlled him the whole time, and we have no idea how Eddie ever tames him. It just doesn't really make sense.
yeah. What is the explanation? It's just that, oh well, he's like, oh, you're a good fit for a host. And it's like, all right, if you say so. Um, but like, yeah, they're just kind of thrown away. They died. Okay, then. But yeah, oh, Riot, sure. It's like I thought it was just from Riz Ahmed, and then so that was a weird thing with the plot. And then, I mean, you can't help but question the 30 to 40 minutes that were cut. Tom Hardy cites his favorite stuff in the movie was something somewhere in that. What was that? Was the movie just more violent and gory, and they just trimmed it down, or was there just whole sets of scenes or subplots that were thrown away? Because I actually think if the movie was a little longer, it'd probably be to his benefit because it would probably beef out the relationship between Eddie and Venom.
Yeah.
So
Release the Hardy
again, it
cut.
was, and this last week, but again, making a movie about Venom and the marketing laid into this, he was an anti-hero. I was like, no, he's really just a dumb fucking villain in Spider-Man
Mhm.
stories. There's nothing else going on with Venom. He's a relatively new character. They did pretty new for as comic canon goes. But there's no Venom stories. It's just stories that were about Spider-Man. So without Spider-Man, oh, so we're gonna beef up Venom. Like the post-credit scene is about Carnage. Carnage is even more ridiculous than Venom is. So it's still just an interesting choice that needs strong execution to work, and this movie was not executed well. So
Mhm.
while it was very successful at the box office, good for some, $80 million opening weekend, by far the biggest October opening weekend at
Yep.
the time. The previous record was Gravity with 55. Um, and then Stars Born also made 42.6. So this was the biggest overall October weekend as well. So that's nice to see. And it's funny because this movie skewed male and skewed young, whereas Stars Born skewed female and skewed old. So
Mhm.
literally all of America went to the movies, right? That's cool to see. But like 5 million more than Ant-Man 2. So it is successful financially. And I think a sequel on that regard, given Sony's desire, to keep this going. But, I mean, I would not recommend this film unless you're going in with these low expectations like me and you had. And I think the best Venom movie to come out this year came out earlier in the summer, and it was called Upgrade, starring Logan Marshall Green, Tom Hardy's twin. So I'd recommend that movie. It's on VOD now.
Before we wrap up on Venom, I did want to mention one scene that we haven't talked about: the makeout scene. I agree with all your points about how this isn't a good movie. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's successful, and it's actually really obvious that this was, if you went into this movie this weekend, you were probably gonna like it anyway, or at least already had low expectations for it, because it has an 89% fan score on Rotten Tomatoes, only a 32% critic score, which basically just says like the people that went to go see it are already fans and they wanted to give it positive reviews, trying to show the critics that they're stupid. But that makeout scene is like the epitome of everything that was wrong with that film to me. Not only was it just like absurd and ridiculous and like such a strange choice, but like you have this class actress Michelle Williams, and like you put her in this position where she's just doing this like ludicrous thing, and like I don't know, man. Like the whole thing, I was sitting there, I was like, this is fucking bizarre. I'm literally watching Venom make out with Eddie Brock, and this is a real thing that happened in 2018. I don't know. Why don't we just jump? There's not much more to say with it. Let's just jump to The Star Is Born. I think a film we both liked a lot more. If you follow us on Twitter, Genie World Peace and at Martin Swagger, and follow the pod at Nowstalgia Pod. Yeah, the pad. The pad. I'm pad on Twitter. The Star Is Born. I mean, man, this is going to be a force of the award shows. It's going to be Gaga, Bradley Cooper, hopefully Charlie as well. We're going to be getting some love on the award circuit. I wanted to start maybe with, this is a remake of a couple of old films. Have you watched any of the previous A Star Is Born? Because I haven't. I wanted to just be upfront about that.
Yeah, I've seen some of the most recent one in 1976.
Babs.
That's the one with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson, which is not very good. I did have some positive influences on music and films, I guess, and that was a remake of the 1954 one with Judy Garland and James Mason, which was a remake of the original, the 1937, Janet Gaynor and Frederick March. So it's a story we've seen before.
Yeah,
is out there to be seen anyway. I've only seen the 70s one, so this one modernizes it, I think, quite well actually. But yeah, I don't think you need any knowledge of the story going in. Actually, I think it benefits you if you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is that I had no idea where this was going to take me, and this took me on an emotional roller coaster. And it's really a tale of two movies. There's like the meet cute and the love story of the first half, and then the tragedy of the drama of the second half. It probably is important to start this off by talking about how Bradley Cooper, this is his directorial debut, and he also cast himself in the starring role. So he really wanted to make this his movie. And as Jackson Maine, a troubled, mid 40s rock star, kind of reaching that point of his career where he's now like a legacy act, and he's an alcoholic. He's a troubled person with a troubled past. Very few like close, vulnerable, intimate relationships, and he meets Lady Gaga, Allie, and she brings out the best in him. What do you make of Cooper kind of putting himself in this role where he, is playing this troubled person that fits a lot of the troubles he went through in his own personal life, being a recovered alcoholic, and I think that there's some stories out there about how he's very close to his mom, but never really seems to talk about his father very much.
About Jackson Maine, really, not about Allie. So I think it's a really like a money part. So I think if you had to pick one, you probably should just. And then Cooper finally got on board and he actually stayed on the Star. And again, I think it was an interesting choice to direct yourself in your directorial debut. That's pretty ambitious, I would say, especially for a movie like this that has a lot riding on it. But it clearly worked out.
Yeah. And he did a lot of work for this too. Didn't he go to not only a vocal coach but a voice coach? So he spoke differently. lowered his voice like a whole octave. He really, I mean, put a lot of work in for this. Almost approached it, with kind of like an athlete might approach the season by training in very specific ways. And I thought he was phenomenal in the role. I actually think Gaga's performance is a little bit more impressive because, like, this movie, like you said, was about Jackson, Maine, and she had to basically play like this side part where, I mean, parts of it didn't. I don't even agree with or understand why they made the choice they did, like to make her, this very successful or not successful, this very good songwriter who then all of a sudden just chooses to make shit work for fame, which doesn't really seem to fit totally with her character. But at least I didn't think so.
Yeah, it did feel like it was missing like a scene of her pushing back with the A&R from label, right?
Right.
Like Jackson kind of alludes to it early on, like, oh, get really big, and then they're gonna try and change you, change your hair, use backup dancers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that is it's a criticism of mainstream music acceptance and making success, and Jackson obviously was someone who pushed against that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we never got Allie, either accepting it and saying why she's accepting it to chase fame after struggling for so long, or pushing back against it for the very same reasons. We didn't get either one of those. It just seemed like that was kind of omitted, and that was probably because the movie was focusing on Jackson, Maine.
Yeah.
At the time.
But Cooper really pulls off like the rock star vibe. I even thought the songs in this. Now I'm pretty sure he like enlisted Jason Isbell to help him with the music. But I thought the song sounded great. Like the first song, Black, or I think it's just the intro is what they named it here, but or Black Eyes maybe. But where he's like playing at like a Coachella type festival, looks like. I thought that song was great. I also really liked Maybe It's Time, and obviously Shallows is the standout from this.
I think what's so cool, like the movie really enriches the original music for a song about music scenes themselves are really as found after Eddie Vedder, but he's like, from what I was reading, he's actually like Jackson Maine's loosely based off of the Kings of Leon dude. And he also like drinks as much as Bon Scott, the first AC/DC singer. He doesn't sound like either. Like, it's really interesting the kind of composite he is, and he looks, of course, like Father John Misty.
Yeah.
The funny thing actually I've seen going around, it doesn't hurt the movie, but as like a legacy, like folk rock / country rock act, a Coachella, big stage at an old, like, it's just weird. Like is he like a solo act who's like as big as Mumford & Sons or something? Because I was just trying to think of like what's a realistic like comp to him in that genre.
I kind of think like almost like Tom Petty. I mean, like maybe I don't really know who else it could be. Yeah, that's a good question. I think like he probably sounds more like Eric Church or like one of those type of guys, but Eric Church obviously younger and not like a legacy act. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Also, I loved all the like comments about how the people who bought tickets to his concerts, you spend like $200 to be down in the pit for Jackson, Maine, and then the closer is a song with his girlfriend that he wrote like 2 days ago. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you're waiting for like your favorite song to come on, and it's be a very frustrating movie going experience. Yeah, I think the first half of the movie is probably my favorite part, but I mean, I think the whole movie is great in general. But like I said, it's kind of distinctively split. But that whole like them meeting each other, figuring each other out, the scene in the parking lot, the scene where they sing "Shallows" for the first time together, like those are like the moments I think I remember most from the movie. And when I think about the second half of the movie, I just think about a lot of sadness, and it's actually I think I think that's why I think the movie is made so well and done so effectively is it's manipulative in a lot of ways, which I think it's done in the best ways that like old school Hollywood kind of used to do. Similar to La La Land is that they use certain tricks to elicit certain emotions, and that's kind of pulls you throughout the movie. And uh, really impressed with Bradley Cooper's debut, but even more his performance.
Yeah, and I think the movie itself is probably the most purely cinematic film I've seen since Sorry to Bother You. You
Mm.
know, and that first act and a half that you mentioned, I think is just really dynamite. Uh, the script, I think, throughout, I think is very tight, but it really does not waste any scenes, any moments in the beginning. And courtship is something that we see all the time in film, right? But it almost is like unconventional the way that we see this. It's not like instantaneous. It's
Mhm.
a little drawn out, and I think Anthony Ramos of Hamilton fame, small role, but I really liked his presence in the movie. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think it's such a crowd pleasing film while maintaining a high quality. It's honestly, it harkens back to Oscar films, Oscar favorites of the last decade. The '90s.
Mhm.
Where movies that were popular and well liked were also really good and awards contenders. It's a nice throwback in that regard, and I think it's very justly going to be in the best picture conversation throughout the year. I think working against it will be that it's coming out at the beginning of award season, so we will see a lot of Cooper and Gaga. You'll see and hear a lot about this film, and as other stuff comes out, and again, a lot of talented directors still waiting to release their films wide. There'll inevitably be some kind of backlash, but I'm positive it will last. I mean,
Mhm.
over 40 million its opening weekend. It's gonna have like a La La Land type commercial success. It should last. Uh, it probably be in theaters longer than Venom, even though Venom nearly doubled it over
Yep.
here in the first weekend. So that's great. Um, I saw this going around, and thinking about it more. I wasn't thinking about it in the moment, but the passage of time in the film, as well as the
Yeah.
location and settings, is just rather unclear throughout the
Yeah.
movie. Um, and there's certain touchstones, right? Like she puts out an album, and then she becomes a Best New Artist winner at the Grammys. We know when the Grammys happen, we know how eligibility works, but it's like, is her whole whirlwind in like a year? You know,
Right.
or it's just unclear.
Yeah, her SNL performance season finale usually ends up around May. So then the Grammys are usually February. So that's like what, 9 months?
Mm-hmm.
Where you don't really even like see them really. It's like I think there's a fight and then they go to the Grammys. Maybe I'm misremembering the sequence of events. Yeah, the passage of time and like you said, the location. I went with my girlfriend Julianne, who her hot take seeing all the trailers was that this movie is going to be terrible, and she loved it. Like she thought it was a little sad, and she's like, I'll probably just watch like the first like hour and a half of the movie next when it comes out. But she really liked Cooper's performance. But she said, like, did they drive a motorcycle from New York to Arizona? And I was like,
I hope
no.
not.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think so. I think it was like a suburb of Los Angeles or like maybe Northern California. But yeah, just like some of the details of it and some of the order of events didn't really make sense. Um, but the thing about this is that, like you said, it's the story of these two. It's really Jackson's story, and the supporting characters in it. Sam Elliott, Andrew Dice Clay, um,
Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle. I thought when they got a chance to be on screen, they all killed it. Especially the scene that will probably stick with me the most, and this is a very like typical Mal, I think, take from the movie, is the scene in the driveway between uh, Jackson and his brother when he tells him that it's really him he idolized and not his dad, and then he's trying to like back out of the driveway and with tears in his eyes. It's such a powerful scene, and I think it also speaks to how well the dialogue in this movie was written. It's almost like too realistic in ways, like the way when they're sitting in the parking lot, I forgot what they said at one point. I think Jackson said something like, I think you're beautiful. And like, as he like keeps talking, like Gaga says over him, oh, you're sweet. Like, and I was like, most times it'd be like a back and forth, but her like speaking over him a little bit was like the perfect like way to like write the dialogue. It just felt very smart and very like true to me, which I appreciated. Um, not really a bad thing to say other than a couple of the choices. I don't know if they made total sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And obviously the movie gets sadder, darker the way
Mm-hmm.
it ends. I think the movie is so successful because it really builds tension
Yeah.
expertly, whether it's starts out maybe just being a little cringy or sense of disappointment on the part of the audience, and then I mean, I remember like I saw this on a Wednesday night. It was like a cool like fan event, so I actually didn't see any previews,
Mm,
which was cool.
nice.
So it was pretty packed though, obviously, as you can imagine. And when he first like relapses and like he grabs pills, like there was a whole like gasp in the audience, an audible gasp, and everyone's just disappointed and like, oh shit. So we
Mhm.
kind of knew it was going to happen. Of course, you knew if you had any knowledge of the older movies, but seeing it happen, it's just like it's one of those real things where the movie is so well made, the character is so well drawn that you're actively like rooting against him, yelling at the script, like, no, don't do that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the Grammy scene really, really jumped out to me just because the SNL I thought worked well too, and those are scenes that we did not know existed. They were not in any trailers or anything. I think
Mhm.
Halsey had a like Instagram like thanks for letting me have a small piece of this amazing moment. So I guess we knew Halsey was involved somehow, but I still wasn't thinking Grammys.
Right.
Um, and that scene unfolding is absurd. And then
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I really like the A&R producer character because they never really made him seem like just a like he could have been too cartoony or too
Mhm.
evil or whatever, right? But no, and he was like, when he basically like puts his balls on the table and it's like, Jackson, you're fucking over Allie, and by staying married to you, she's looking bad and things like that, right? And it just a lot of that stuff seemed actually quite realistic to me,
Mhm.
even though it's not as enjoyable watch in Act 2 and 3. I still think the movie like really hammers it home. I actually really like to watch it again with the emotional beats now
Right.
in my head, like knowing what's going to happen. I'd really like to see because I can just watch it closer. But through one watch, I think it's cinematic, crowd pleasing, and filled with great performances, and the music's awesome too. There's really no flaws.
I didn't know Gaga had this in her. And I think that's why for me she wins the movie because I really liked Bradley Cooper. I thought he was pretty good in American Sniper for some of the I think the problems that
Mhm.
movie has, and
Living up.
um, I just think Gaga really being able to go toe to toe for him in this role that I think he's probably going to win the Oscar for unless another performance comes about. I mean, there's a couple on the
Chalamet.
horizon. Yeah, and Gosling uh might steal it too with First Man, but I hear Beautiful Boy actually is not getting great reviews so far, which is
Yeah, I think the movie is mixed. It'll probably not be a Best Picture nominee, the way Call Me by Your Name was, but I'm
mhm,
expecting nomination
Chalamet to get that.
at least Timmy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I actually right now, given what I think of the race, I think Gaga actually has a better chance.
Yeah,
At I mean, if the momentum continues, you figure Best Picture and Gaga are probably locks for nominees. Cooper
definitely.
probably gets the Best Actor nominee as well. And that heck, the movie's like really moving, and really doing well. Heck, Sam Elliott maybe could even get one. I think he's probably not in the movie enough to justify that. Kind of like
Mhm.
a Michael Stuhlbarg from Calling by
Yeah.
Your Name, for example. But no, no, we got a few months before we see how that goes. But I put my money on Gaga over Cooper right now.
Interesting. So it'll be something to look out for. Yeah, go see A Star Is Born. It's a really well done movie, and there's not any aspects that I think you can look at and say like, well, that wasn't that great. Like we said, a couple of the choices maybe didn't make total sense, but otherwise it was really good. So check it out. Yeah, and check out Venom if you want to, really appreciate this movie even more. Because after seeing A Star Is Born, then going to see Venom, I was pretty disappointed this weekend. So
And guess what? They both have the same director of photography. Wouldn't know it though.
wouldn't know it. We're gonna wrap up there. What do we got next week, Dave?
Yeah, next week, the Better Call Saul season finale is airing right after we're done recording. So we'll be a little late on our full season review of Saul. Happy to catch up on that though. The show
Mm-hmm.
was excellent, to the surprise of to the surprise of no one who actually
Yep.
watched the show. Um, First Man, Damien Chazelle, Ryan Gosling.
Hell yeah.
Thank yourself for that. Neil Armstrong, moon landing film. That comes out. We'll definitely talk about that. Old Man the Gun, Robert Redford's quote last film. It's been out for a while. We're going to try and get to that. It's expanded into slightly wider release, so it's by both of us now. We'll talk about that. Musically, there's nothing super big. Like, I don't know how excited you are for some older acts like Black Eyed Peas and Tom Morello, but they're dropping. LMI has her debut project coming out. Maybe that'll be good. And then lastly, the Romanoffs, the Amazon show from Matthew Weiner, creator of Mad Men, is releasing the first 2 episodes on Friday. So we'll be talking about both of those episodes, the anthology series. Excited for that big cast. And actually, also, one final thing I forgot about. This Wednesday, 22 July, the Netflix film directed by Paul Greengrass about the 2011 Norway terrorist attacks comes out. That was a movie that awards movie was screening at film festivals. Good reviews. So that'll be on Netflix on Wednesday of all days. So maybe we'll talk about 3 movies, but a lot to talk about. So check out
Lots to talk about. Hey, just a random question for you. So I was listening to a podcast with Juliet Littman from The Ringer, and she mentioned on there that Rashida Jones is married to Ezra Koenig of Vampire Weekend. Did you know that?
I did know that.
I almost crashed my car. I was so surprised. Couldn't believe it. It was amazing.
It's a weird pairing.
Such a weird pairing. And also, Rashida Jones recently dropped a documentary on Netflix about her father, Quincy Jones, who I did not know was her father. So
I did not know that one though.
I learned a lot about Rashida Jones the last 3 days, and quite eye-opening. But thanks for listening. Please subscribe on YouTube and iTunes and everywhere else. We'll see you next week.